is Sir Keir Starmer right that he doesn't want the strikes to go ahead and that he thinks the Prime Minister actually does?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself in a very strange position where I actually agree with Keir Starmer for once. Starmer has hit the nail on the head. The government want its Margaret Thatcher moment when she took on the miners. They want a distraction from Partygate. They want a distraction from soaring fuel prices, from the cost of living crisis. And they want to take on the unions. It's a great distraction. It's red meat for the Tory voters. They rally the party faithful. So I think we do. And I think this strike's really avoidable. I think we should be still around the negotiating table. But rather than negotiate in good faith with the unions, SAP seems more interested in the latest soundbite in the press. And I think it's very sad that the government are intent on this course, which we are going to see, the trains disrupted for a week.
You've got to say, people like Tim Shoveler, who's Network Rail's chief negotiator, is going to be listening to you with his jaw hitting the floor, because he says that the RMT has dismissed talks before we've even finished. He says we're serious about trying to find a solution and work out a compromise that gives our people a decent pay rise. Our offers, he says, have so far been rejected, with union demands being far from affordable. But we're committed to continue to try and talk to find a way through. It's the RMT, he says, who've walked away from this.
Well, the reality is the inflation rate over the last 3 years has meant that workers have taken a real terms cut in pay of around 20%. Now, the government have told Network Rail they're limited to offering a 2% pay rise. So in reality, what they're offering is an 18% pay cut over the 3 years that we've had a pay freeze. Now, these are the people that have kept the country running during the pandemic. And at the same time, we've had shareholders picking up billions of pounds because the train operating companies and the rolling stock companies were funded even during the pandemic by the government to the tune of around £20 billion. And all that money, about a tenth of that money, was taken and given to the shareholders in dividends. So there's money enough for the shareholders, but the government aren't allowing Network Rail or the train operating companies to actually negotiate. They've given them a percentage of 2%, which is really an insult to the workers, who have sometimes been sick during the pandemic. Sometimes a lot of them died during the pandemic to keep this country running.
Yeah, but I wonder what you would say to a lot of people watching at the moment who are just dreading next week, can't get into work or having to find another way to get into work. They know it's going to cause chaos to everyone's plans. And they feel, or a lot of people who get in touch with us say that it's just not the time to strike over pay and conditions. We have all been through that pandemic, not just you.
Exactly. We've all been through that pandemic and we've all been through the wage freezes. And if I had my way, we would be on strike to get every person in Britain a pay rise, the nurses, the NHS workers, the people out there, the key workers, the cleaners who've worked right through this pandemic. Because what the pandemic did highlight was who really was the key workers, who were the people who kept the country running. We have a proliferation of millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires in this country. We've got enough money to send billions and billions of pounds in weapons over for a fratricidal war in the Ukraine, but we haven't got enough to pay the people who kept the country running during the pandemic. It's all wrong, and the priorities have got to change. We've got to stop what we've got at the minute, which is a redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich.
The reality is, and whereas a lot of people may, on the surface, like the idea of all these key workers getting significant pay rises. I mean, look, on individual levels, no one sort of disagrees with it. But if that was actually to be implemented, the country would be bankrupt, because it's not just about finding that money to pay them this year. It's finding that money and with incremental increases to pay them every year.
Well, look, when people go to pay their gas bill, which is soared by 50%, or their electric bill, or try to put petrol in their car, and they've all gone up massively, we can't go to the gas station and go, well, we don't really want to pay you. We'll give you a percentage, and you can have the rest next year. Life doesn't work like that. The reality is that people are suffering a real cost of living crisis. I live in the London Borough of Newham, and I see working people queuing up every day to use a food bank because they can't subsist on the wages that they get paid. I'm talking about people in full-time employment, because in reality, they've lost a fifth of their buying power. It's gone down by 20%, and that's massive. Now we're going to have, with this war in Ukraine, we're going to have food staples like wheat, like bread. We're going to have pasta. We're going to have all these things, the staples of life, going through the roof as well. So people need a pay rise. And when they say there's no money in the country, there's money enough to squander £20 billion on PPE for Tory party donors, giving them contracts for PPE that didn't actually work. There's money enough to fight wars all around the world. They give a blank check for a fratricidal war in the Ukraine. There's money enough that we have a proliferation of the highest earners in society. The number of billionaires and trillionaires during the pandemic has gone through the roof. We need a redistribution of wealth. We need to stop the concentration of wealth in a very small parasitic elite and give it to the people of this country.
I mean, you talk about the situation in Ukraine, and yes, obviously it costs an awful lot of money, but there is an argument. I mean, part of also talk about the increase in the price of wheat and problems with pasta and all these sort of issues and basic foods that we need over here. A lot of that is caused by the situation in Ukraine. So it's within our interests to bring that under control.
I don't know who our interests is. I mean, I think it's in everybody's interest to get a negotiated peaceful settlement and stop the war and stop the crisis in food and oil and energy. But we're not doing that. Instead, we've got this gung-ho approach where everybody's rushing into war, giving people weapons to fight war, and not turning around and doing what people should be doing, is sitting down and having a negotiated settlement. A bit like Grant Shapps, really. He'd rather sit there and fire off missiles in the press at the RMT rather than sit around a table and negotiate a peace deal.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.